Every year, something extraordinary happens in the deserts of Saudi Arabia. Hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people from across the world gather in Mecca. Different languages, different cultures, different races, but all moving together as one. This is the Hajj. It's one of the five pillars of Islam, a pilgrimage every Muslim is expected to make at least once in their lifetime if they're able to. But to describe Hajj just as a religious obligation would miss the point. Because Hajj is not just about where you go, it's about what it does to you. The journey begins in Mecca at the Grand Mosque and then moves onward to Mina, to Arafat, to Muzdalif, before returning again. Over 5 days, pilgrims retrace steps that go back thousands of years to Prophet Ibrahim, his wife Hajar, and their son Ismail. And every ritual tells a story. When pilgrims walk between the hills of Safa and Marwa, they're reliving Hagar's desperate search for water for her child. When they stand on the plains of Arafat under the open sky, they're following the footsteps of Prophet Muhammad during his final sermon, a sermon that calls for equality, dignity, and justice. There are no VIP sections here, no hierarchy. Everyone wears simple garments. For men, just 2 pieces of white cloth. For women, modest dress without distinction. It strips away markers of wealth, status, and nationality. And for a moment, the world looks different. Imagine standing shoulder to shoulder with someone from a country you have never been to, speaking a language you don't understand, but performing the exact same rituals at the exact same time for the exact same purpose. That's Hajj. And that experience of shared humanity is where things get really interesting. Because what happens in Mecca doesn't just stay in Mecca. A landmark study by researchers from Harvard, the University of Chicago, and Case Western Reserve looked at what Hajj actually does to people, not spiritually, but socially. They followed over 1,600 pilgrims and studied them months after they returned home. And what they found challenges a lot of assumptions. First, Hajj makes people more observant in their faith. That part is expected. But at the same time, it also makes them more open, more tolerant, more accepting of others. Pilgrims were significantly more likely to believe that people of different religions are equal, more likely to say that different faiths can live in harmony, more likely to express positive views about people from other countries. And here is something that often surprises people. There was no evidence of this increased religiosity. There was no evidence that this increased religiosity led to more extremism. In fact, the opposite. Pilgrims were more likely to reject violence, more likely to condemn violence in the name of religion, more inclined towards peace. So the idea that deeper religious experience automatically leads to harder, more rigid worldviews doesn't really hold up here. If anything, Hajj complicates that narrative. It suggests that when people encounter diversity in a shared, meaningful space, not as competitors but as equals, it can soften boundaries rather than harden them. And you can see why. During Hajj, Muslims from over 100 countries interact constantly. They eat together, pray together, and move together. They see each other not as abstract identities, but as people. And that changes things. The study even found shifts in attitudes towards women. Pilgrims returned with more positive views on women's roles in society, more supportive of girls' education, and more open to women working in professional fields. That's not usually what you hear in popular narrative about religion and gender. But again, Hajj doesn't neatly fit into narratives. It reshapes them. And this isn't just academic theory. We have seen it play in real life. Malcolm X, one of the most influential civil rights leaders in American history, went to Hajj in 1964. At that point, his worldview had been shaped by racial divisions of the United States. What, what he experienced in Mecca changed him. He wrote about seeing tens of thousands of people, blonde haired, blue eyed, dark skinned, from, from every corner of the world, treating each other as equals. And he said it forced him to rethink everything he believed about race. That's the power of Hajj. It doesn't just affirm belief, it challenges assumptions. Now, of course, not everyone sees it that way. There have been critics, especially in Western discourse, who argue that Hajj promotes a rigid, uniform version of Islam, that it erases local tradition, that it reinforces division. But evidence doesn't really support that. In fact, the same Harvard study found the sense of unity developed during Hajj does not come with increased hostility towards non Muslims. If anything, it extends beyond the Muslim world. Pilgrims reported more positive attitudes towards people of other faiths, no, not less, and that matters, especially in the world where Islam is often misunderstood. Surveys have shown that large numbers of people, particularly in West, associate Islam with a verse like radical or violent. Hajj tells a different story. It shows a version of Islam rooted in community, equality, and shared humanity. But here is the thing: Hajj is not a utopia. It's physically demanding. It takes place in intense heat, sometimes over 40 degrees Celsius. It requires patience, discipline, and resilience. Pilgrims walk long distances, they navigate massive crowds, they face logistical challenges, and yet, despite all of that, they come away transformed. Not because everything was easy, but because it wasn't. Because in those moments of exhaustion and vulnerability, something deeper happens. You start to see yourself differently, and you start to see others differently too. But the but the end of the journey, when men shave their heads and women cut a lock of their hair, it symbolizes renewal, a kind of reset, not just spiritually but socially. And maybe that's why Hajj has endured for centuries, because it does something that is increasingly rare. It brings people together not in competition but in cooperation, not to assert identity but to transcend it in a world that often feels divided. That is not a small thing, it's a reminder that even in the middle of vast differences, there are moments when humanity can still move together in the same direction. And for millions of people every year, that moment begins in Mecca.